Good evening, everyone. This is a board meeting of the Village of Sleepy Hollow Board of Trustees. Would you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a couple of minutes. Just want to make a few announcements of some, unfortunately, people have passed away, some residents. So, the first is Mary Louise Wells. She's 78 years old, of Kendall Way. The next was Valerie Bohegian, 81 years old, of Hunter Avenue and a longtime resident of Sleepy Hollow. Then we have George Hungosh, 77 years old, of Pine Close, a lifelong resident of Sleepy Hollow and beloved father of G.J. Hungosh of our Public Works Department. Jean Anzavino, 71 years old, of Beacon, and she was the beloved mother of Brian Anzavino of our Public Works Department. Leonard Andrew, 79 years old, of Pocoho Drive. And then finally, Anthony Boetti, 78 years old, of Weber Avenue, a lifelong resident of Sleepy Hollow and the beloved father of our own Police Chief Boetti. So if we could just have a moment of silence to remember them and their families. Okay, thank you. You can be seated. So we have two public hearings tonight. The first is the zoning amendment. Paula McCarthy,
Yes.
would you like to read the public hearing?
Okay, please take notice that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow has called for a public hearing on Tuesday, July 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter in Village Hall at 28 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York, to hear and consider comments from members of the public on the proposed local law entitled A Local Law Amending Chapter 450 of the Code of the Village of Sleepy Hollow entitled Zoning, pertaining to proposed zoning revisions. All residents and taxpayers are entitled to attend and be heard at said hearing. Village Hall is accessible to all disabled persons by order of the Board of Trustees, June 29, 2021. The zoning revisions have been posted on the website, and I did not receive any written comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Susan from BFJ, our planners, is here. Susan, would you like to just speak briefly about it?
Can I speak from here?
Yeah, I think the microphone should pick you up.
Sure. So we prepared a short presentation to go through this. The genesis of this project is the adoption in 2019 of a comprehensive plan, which, for those of you who remember that or may have been involved with that process, there were a number of recommendations, dozens, I would say, that came out of that plan. And so the village wanted to start tackling implementation of the comprehensive plan and decided to start first with the downtown zoning recommendations as a sort of a short-term initial push, particularly in the wake of COVID-19. As the village is sort of emerging from the pandemic, it seems a good time to think about your downtown and how zoning might be able to support greater activity and revitalization. So that's really the primary focus here. We worked closely with the steering committee as well as the village board as a whole over about 7 months it's been to really hone in on those recommendations and further develop them. And so the package that you have before you and that's posted on the village's website has about four types of zoning updates. First is there's a couple map changes proposed. There's a number of changes proposed regarding permitted uses in the downtown zones, a little bit on parking, and then there's a couple areas where we're proposing that there be development incentives that could be considered to spur that, again, that revitalization of the inner village. So just getting started, it looks like a lot, there is a lot. I'll try to get through it fairly quickly. We tried to color code it a little bit. The blue is a couple map changes, which will be fairly quick, I think. Green deals with uses. There's a bit on parking, and then again, those development incentives. So I'll just kind of dive in a little bit. The first map change is probably the most straightforward of all. What you have here, this is a direct recommendation of the comprehensive plan. This is the existing zoning on Hudson Street. It's the R4A district. It's the only place in the village where that district exist. We think it's our best guess that this is probably a holdover from the heyday days of GM. It's a zoning district that allows residential, but also a number of commercial uses, including restaurants and retail. That's never ended up happening here on Hudson. There are commercial uses sort of on either end, but the rest of the street is pretty solidly residential. And I think it was a sense from the comprehensive planning process that there's not a desire to see that turn over into a mixed-use corridor, that it is a residential corridor. So the recommendation from the plan was to convert the two ends of Hudson Street where there are commercial uses to the C2, which is your downtown zoning district, commercial zoning district, but the rest of the block would be R5, which is your residential district that's comparable to the rest of the inner village residential areas. So that's a pretty straightforward map change. No real changes on uses here otherwise, other than just changing the map and keeping this more of a residential zone. The next map change is a little bit more involved, and this again is straight from the comprehensive plan. We had a lot of details to work through on this, as you'll see. And this is recognizing that there's a stretch of Lower Beekman Avenue, basically between Kendall Avenue and the railroad tracks, that is very different from the rest of Beekman, even though it's in the same C2 zoning district. So where we are right now is in the C2 district, it's sort of your central downtown commercial district, your sort of most intensive commercial district, and it's also the zoning that's in place here on Lower Beekman. But as you can see in the pictures, what's actually on the ground is quite different than what you'd see here on Upper Beekman. But if someone could tear down one of these houses and build a building very much like the one we're in now, something that is 4 stories, right up on the street, quite different from what you see here. And so what the plan recommended and what we followed through on is creation of an overlay district that would be focused on the form, the built environment of this part of Beekman Avenue. We wouldn't really get into uses because there are a lot of uses in a commercial zone, such as offices, restaurants. They could actually fit in very nicely in this kind of building context. The issue is the form. The issue is trying to preserve the scale of what's already here in Lower Beekman and make sure that if there is new development, that it is designed and built according to something that will fit in here. And so what we've really gotten into here is that there are kind of 2 major types of development here, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And what you see on those is very consistent setbacks, consistent treatment of landscaped front yards, and then a lot of instances of porches or stoops. And so these two typologies which we see are the residential porch or stoop building, where typically it's set back from the street a little bit. It looks very residential, even if it has a commercial use in it. It typically has a porch, a few steps to get up to that porch. Usually has a pitched roof. It looks primarily like a home because that's what it developed as. The other typology that you see here in this stretch of Beekman, not quite as much, is a little bit more comparable to what we see up here, but it's a little bit smaller scale typically, the neighborhood storefront. And that is typically closer to the street, usually has a commercial ground floor, but again, it's a little bit lower scale than Upper Beekman. And so the approach here is in this portion which you see on the map in the hatched pink of Lower Beekman, there would be an overlay district created to really establish standards that development would need to meet, both particular to these 2 types of building typologies and then also across the board. There's a lot in the zoning package that gets into details of setbacks and height. I'm just going to kind of cover some of the big things here. These are the two typologies that we see in Lower Beekman. And again, this is supposed to represent kind of what's here on the ground. I hope it looks familiar. But what we've looked at with the standards, which are part of the proposed zoning, is a lot of different things to get a strong architecture that really supports what's here now, preserves that character. So making sure that you have modulation in terms of vertical. You don't have a box. You don't have a box either at the vertical level or across the board. You don't have just a uniform facade. You've got interesting things happening. You've got porches. You've got different setbacks. You've got a little bit of greater setback from Beekman than you have up here, where up here you can generally build right to the sidewalk. Here we'd like to see it set back a little bit, hopefully with a porch or a stoop or even an awning in that setback area, that sort of build-to zone we call it. Encouraging different types of roofs, pitched roofs primarily. The maximum height in this overlay would not be any different than what it is currently. It's 4 stories. So the intent really is that if you have a building that goes up to those 4 stories, you want to make sure that it looks pretty similar to a 2 or 3 story building. So there's a lot of details in here on these graphics, which are part of the zoning package. And then more broadly, throughout the overlay, we are looking at, again, things that make sure that you don't have these just boxes that are created downtown. So different types of articulation, high quality building materials. There's provisions for signage for parking. There's a lot of graphics here in the zoning package that are meant to be a guidebook for developers as well as for the planning board as they consider these applications. So I would say the bottom line is it's really meant to try to capture the character and the scale that's there today and make sure that that continues in the future. Okay. So moving on from map changes, we did spend a fair amount of time in the comprehensive plan talking about uses, and I think it ended up being somewhat prophetic. We had the experience of the pandemic, the idea that we want to support the local business community and make things as flexible and easy as possible. Try to allow a broad array of uses that might be appropriate for downtown. And so you see here there's some proposed revisions and additions. Some of these are already allowed in the downtown C2 district. We're just doing a little bit of cleanup. Offices are already allowed. We're just making it explicit. Same with financial institutions, childcare. But there are some new uses that are proposed really to try to promote an active downtown environment. Things like museums and art galleries, artisan, which is for small scale, hand manufacturing, woodwork units, co-working, anything related to food and drink, breweries, brew pubs, distilleries, and then the ability for businesses, multiple businesses, to occupy one space. So for example, you might have a store that at night offers classes or is an art gallery at night. So different things happening in the same space, again trying to promote that flexibility to allow those downtown spaces to be filled. And then we propose to add as accessory uses, again, something I think we all learned a lot about in the last 18 months is outdoor dining and also rooftop dining. There are a couple uses that are in the C2 district now that are very auto-oriented, and these were clear recommendations of the comprehensive plan to remove from the C2 district. First is the planned commercial development group. That's sort of a suburban scale office. Is what you would typically see with that use, and then a car wash, which I think we said in the comprehensive plan process, and again during this process, is not terribly appropriate for a dense downtown mixed-use environment. Okay. This was, I think, a long-standing recommendation from the comp plan even earlier. Is you have this somewhat outdated provision in the zoning code that I think it probably dates to when GM was full and hopping, and the village probably didn't want to see a proliferation of particularly bars. Obviously, times have changed, and food is generally a strength for downtowns, and it's something that most downtowns want to see a lot of. So right now you have this limitation of how many restaurants or food service establishments can locate within a certain distance of each other. So we're suggesting eliminating this provision, which would essentially allow restaurants to operate really anywhere in the C2 district. Okay. The next use aspect deals with mixed use. And this again is straight out of the comprehensive plan. You have this current provision for mixed use that doesn't allow the non-residential portion of the mixed use to be on the second story. And I think the genesis of that is that it's sort of the traditional way of looking at mixed use, where you have the stores on the bottom and the apartments above. And what we're seeing in some downtowns is that often you might have small offices on the upper floors, and that's fine. You have a lawyer's office, physical therapy, architect, who knows, some small scale office that might make a lot of sense on some of those upper floors currently would not be able to locate. And that's something that we think is not the best approach, because a small office use could actually improve your daytime population in the village. So we're recommending eliminating that provision. And then there is an existing provision that when you do have mixed use, it cannot include manufacturing. And again, that's looking traditionally at the old way of manufacturing as something that typically was like a factory. It might have nuisance impacts. So we've suggested this exception for that small-scale artisan-type manufacturing where, it may be that you have a shopkeeper who makes the things that they sell. Maybe some of it they sell online, but they'd like to make it and sell it, in a brick-and-mortar space in the village. So this basically just allows for that very small-scale production, manufacturing to occur in a mixed-use environment. Okay, so that's it for map changes and uses. We have one slide on parking. Always looking to tweak parking because it's something that I think everyone has a lot of opinions about in a downtown. And so a lot of these are longstanding recommendations from the comprehensive plan. So the first actually deals with medical and dental offices, which we have found, and I think many people have experienced this, they do generate more turnover, more parking demand than other offices. So this is recognizing that fact and having a slightly higher parking requirement for those uses, again, in recognition of the fact that they typically create more demand. On the other side, the idea of being more flexible for businesses, there's a proposal to exempt very small businesses, so under 5,000 square feet, from the village's loading requirements. And that's really recognizing that most of these very small businesses can never provide the loading required anyway. The buildings are here, the businesses are here, they can't exactly create off-street loading spaces. So it's really just to kind of make things easier for them, make them not have to get a variance for something that they can't provide in the first place. The next one deals with off-site parking. You have a current provision which allows businesses to satisfy a portion of their parking at locations off-site. We're suggesting increasing that a bit, providing a bit more flexibility for businesses to locate parking in the downtown, and in recognition that this is a very walkable environment and that is something that most people can find parking and walk a little bit of ways to their desired business. The next one is something that actually it's an interpretation that the village currently has and has for quite a while, basically exempting existing ground floor businesses from the parking requirements unless a new use that goes in there actually creates a higher demand. So that's something that's not technically been on the books, but it's been the way that the village has interpreted the zoning law, and we're just proposing to make that, to codify that, sort of make it formal. Again, recognizing that in a village where you have an established built environment, you have buildings that have existed, cannot provide off-street parking, never will be able to provide off-street parking. Why are you making them go through hoops to get variances for something that they can't provide? And then the last one is something that came up with the steering committee. Again, recognizing the constraints that a lot of the village's properties have, is that you have in some cases very narrow lots within the C2 district that cannot provide off-street parking because of the configuration of their lot. And again, you'll never be able to unless they buy the property next door and combine them. That may not be what you want. So this proposal would exempt those very narrow lots on certain streets. So again, it's a fairly limited approach there. So that's it for parking. And then the last sort of set of proposed changes are about development incentives. So this is something that was discussed in the comprehensive plan. The details were sort of left to be figured out, and we've hopefully done that as part of this project. So what the proposed zoning includes is a package of incentives for the C2 district, and only the C2 districts, where the Board of Trustees may grant a special permit for some development incentives, which you'll see regarding height and floor area ratio and parking, if the developer does something in return. And so we spent a lot of time with the steering committee talking about what do we want the developer to do in return, what are the community benefits that we'd like to see, how do we kind of establish those benefits, give some flexibility, make it not onerous for a developer to come in and meet these requirements, but also give the village board clear guidance about what benefits really are desired. And so what we come up with is a package of community benefits, which are at 3 different levels. There's ones that are high value to the village and or high priority, and those have the highest point level. Then there's sort of medium and then low. And basically the developer needs to reach 15 points. And you'll see, I think on this slide, yes. I'm not going to read these, and I don't expect the audience to read them either. But there's a whole range of benefits, and it's meant to give the developer a lot of options, but also a lot of options that are really good for the village. So things like providing open space, public open space on the property, green building, green infrastructure, streetscape improvements, providing off-street parking that is available to the public, energy efficiency, all kinds of things like public art, cultural facilities. So that there's kind of a grab bag, and there's lots of different ways for the developer to get to that 15 points. Obviously, if they do something high value, most likely fairly expensive, that might get them more points. But there are lots of different approaches and ways to get to that threshold. And so what they would get in return for that, the incentives, you see in this chart, what you see on the left is the existing zoning in the C2, and then on the right, you see if they were to capitalize on the incentives, the zoning incentives, they would be able to get basically an extra story of height. So instead of 4 stories, they get 5 stories. They get about relaxation on the parking, which is recognizing that the C2 district is very close to a train station, and by nature is transit oriented. And then there are some changes on floor area ratio, which basically would allow them to reach that 5th story to maximize that height increase. Some tweaks on setbacks as well, but I would say height, parking, and floor area ratio are the primary incentives here. Okay. And then one other change on the just overall C2 is something that I think dovetails with a lot of the lower Beekman design overlay standards. But this would be throughout the C2 district. This would essentially cover for the rear yard where you have a commercial property that abuts residential. Sometimes you see that kind of butting up against each other in the rear. In order to minimize the impact on that residential lot, this would require some step back on the height. So you couldn't get your 45 or 55 stories all the way back necessarily in the rear yard. You have to step down to a lower height of 25 feet. Again, making sure that you're minimizing that impact on the neighboring residential property. Okay. Just a couple more. This is dealing with adaptive reuse, which is the reuse and typically renovation of a historic structure, which may be formerly institutional use, maybe former religious building, and you see these. Obviously, there's some in the village, but really throughout the region in Westchester County, you've been seeing as things like church closures or other institutions go away. Sometimes they leave in their wake these really important buildings that may or may not be officially designated as historic, but certainly the village would not want to see them go away. And so this is really trying to incentivize developers to reuse those buildings for uses that make sense within that context, and to try to minimize the demolitions that we would see. So this would allow the planning board to give a special permit that basically provides some modifications and relaxations of a lot of your bulk standards. So lot area, height, stories, coverage, floor area. There's no specified incentive here. It's basically just giving the planning board a pretty high degree of flexibility to allow some modifications here, recognizing that many of these buildings were built before zoning was in place, so they may not meet some of these requirements. Okay, and parking requirements could also be modified. And then on the flip side of this, from the incentive to sort of from the carrot to the stick, that if the developer or the property owner wanted to demolish one of these buildings that are eligible for these incentives, they would need to get a special permit for that demolition from the trustees. Okay, so this is the last one. And this is something, it wasn't explicitly in the comprehensive plan because it was sort of happening concurrently, the development of the strategic property redevelopment floating zone. But we do have some experience since this zone was adopted, and there was a feeling among the committee and the board that we'd like to see this made a little bit more flexible, a little bit more usable throughout the downtown. And so currently, this floating zone can only be established on public property. So this would essentially broaden the eligibility of this development floating zone to larger privately owned properties as well. And those would be properties which either themselves or if you put them together in an assemblage has at least 65 feet of frontage on these certain streets. And again, also provides flexibility on the types of benefits that are sort of considered in this granting of the floating zone, and then a cap on how high you can go in terms of the height and the floor area bonus. It's basically just trying to make some tweaks to this existing floating zone to make it more workable and hopefully more attractive to developers who are interested in Sleepy Hollow. Okay, so I'm not going to read this slide either, but it always comes out, and when you do a zoning study, that you find things that you want to do now, you want to do, and you're trying to kind of, you know, keep to a scope, keep to, you know, your project, you know, as it was originally planned. So we always wanted to keep track of the to-do list for later, for a future project, and there's a whole bunch of these, and they can be added really to the comprehensive plan recommendations too. But you know, things like looking outside the inner village to other areas of the village, other zoning, particularly in some of the residential zones, ways to enhance the environmental sustainability of the village. Again, trying to make sure that you're reducing the burden that non-conforming lots have, and then just there's always room for clarification of the zoning. You know, tweaks that you want to make. Historic preservation law came out in the comprehensive plan as well. So this is kind of just a running list, really for the village to have, so that if they embark on future zoning or other planning projects, they kind of have this in the back pocket. And this is my last slide. Then we'll take questions. Just want to give a sense of where we are. Once the public hearing is closed, and we can talk about when that may occur, but once the hearing has been closed and we've gotten all the public comments that coming, we will make, in conjunction with the Board of Trustees, we'll make final edits based on the comments that we've heard. We will complete the secret process, which can't really happen until you have your final zoning in front of you. And then the final step will be positioning the board to adopt both the negative declaration under seeker and also the zoning code updates themselves. So the timeline is somewhat dependent on when the public hearing closes and how long the board wants to take to think about comments and potential revisions, but it could happen this summer or early fall is what I think we would expect. So that's it for me, and I think Rachel will be Clint, because I think we probably need to just open it up for public comment or additional comments from the board.
Thank you, Susan. So we'll open it up to the public for comments now. Does anyone from the public have any comments for the matter of the public hearing only right now? If you do, you can stand in the microphone in the middle. Go ahead, Ms. White.
Ann White. I live at Kendall on Hudson, and I want to begin by expressing the enormous loss. Actually, two losses. Mary Lou Wells, who contributed enormously to our community at Kendall during the time she was there, and Len Andrew, who contributed just vast amounts and was such a wonderful, compassionate, caring, and effective person in moving the village forward. So I need to acknowledge that before beginning. I have a few comments tonight.
I just want to remind you, these comments right now are just for the public hearing. You'll have another opportunity for any other comments during our regular public comment section.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so this is strictly just for the zoning.
Yes, but I couldn't start.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to remind you.
I had to. I have only had a half hour to look at this. So my first, it was not up on the website until this morning after I requested it. So my first request is that the public hearing be extended beyond tonight so that I can have more time to study it. I do have a couple of comments related to the community benefits, and I'm looking at the affordable housing benefit. Provision of affordable housing is defined by Westchester County at a minimum of 10% of total units. That does not define what percentage of Westchester County AMI that affordable housing is at. And if we value the diversity of our village, we must be willing to offer some 30% to 50% of Westchester County AMI housing. And so 10% is really a minimum. It's double what we're getting at Edge on Hudson. But I think we all know none of this is really affordable to the diverse population of our village. And so I would encourage further definition of what the affordable housing would consist of, what percentage it would be at, and also perhaps offer an additional bonus for going to 15%. Second, the question of, in the parking section, it's referred to as we're aiming for a transit-oriented village. Well, we need to be sure that we follow up to get some transit if we're going to be transit-oriented. So that goes beyond this. I'm simply saying that I approve of most of the parts of this. And then my other concern is for the accessibility for seniors, particularly people with walkers. There are more and more of us at Kendall with walkers. And this village is not very accessible. The board of the TASH is now working with us at Kendall to figure out what they can do to make it more accessible for seniors, for us to bring a busload in to go to the TASH. And I would hope that the ADA would be required for any new commercial buildings, but I'm told that's building code, not zoning code. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board on the matter of the public hearing?
Good evening. My name is Renee and I live on Chestnut Street. But what I hear of the planning is that we focus a lot on the downtown Sleepy Hollow, but we're not hearing about this part where most of the community live. And we feel like we are separating this part of the town when we try to unify the community. So if we can work in the planning board that work as Ann mentioned, that make more commuter for the people to come up here, not drive the business down there just to attend lower Sleepy Hollow part. So why not bringing them to here for the business that already exists in here? So that would be my comment too. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just going to, Trustee Spire would like to make a clarification.
I'd just like to, and I appreciate you bringing that forward, but the reason why I do want to just make a comment, this was the first series, if you will, of many of these to follow, and as pointed out in the presentation, we were really, the scope of the work was downtown based on budget and also how we can implement it. So be assured that your comments are being seriously considered and within the scope of the long-term planning. And I think that's important clarification, if I may.
Also, if I could, I just
Yes.
want to make clear, I know we spent a lot of time talking about Lower Beekman, but many of these zoning changes would apply to the entire C2
Yes.
district, which is all of the inner village, including this part of Beekman as well, and the sort of side streets that are in the C2.
Thank you.
Would anybody else from the public like to address the board on the matter of the public hearing? Does the board have any additional
No.
comments? Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we leave it open for at least another week.
Absolutely.
Everybody's agreeable to that?
Yes.
Excuse me, I believe you will probably need to leave it open for 2 weeks or
Okay.
3 weeks. So set it as you will.
Okay, so why don't we set it for at least 2 weeks for now, and then we could extend that if we had to?
Yes.
Okay. So 2 weeks is the 27th of July. Okay, great. Ms. McCarthy-Tompkins, would you like to read the next public
Sure.
hearing notice, please?
Sure.
Thank you,
If I
Susan.
could, I just want to recognize that
Oh, sorry.
both the speakers tonight were on the conversation steering committee, very involved in the process, so good to see you both again, and thank you.
Susan, I apologize, this is new for me, so thank you for your time. Thank you for coming, I'm sorry.
It's new to all of us, we've seen each other, we're all a little rusty, so thank you.
Thank you for coming. Okay, Ms. McCarthy Tompkins, why don't you go ahead and read the next one?
Okay. Please take notice, the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow will hold a public hearing on July 13, 2021, 7 p.m. or soon thereafter at Sleepy Hollow Village Hall, 28 Beekman Avenue in Sleepy Hollow, New York, for the purpose of hearing public comments on the Village of Sleepy Hollow current Community Development Block Grant, CDBG applications. The CDBG program is administered by the Westchester County Planning Department, which provides resources to eligible local governments for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low, moderate income persons. The Village of Sleepy Hollow is applying for 3 CDBG grants with a request amount of $250,000 for each project. The projects are as follows: North Washington Valley Street Drainage Improvements Project, Valley Street Sidewalk Streetscape Project, and the Downtown Pipe Relining Project. The hearing will provide further information about the projects. The hearing is being conducted pursuant to Section 570.486, Subpart 1 of the CFR, and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. All residents and taxpayers are welcome to attend and be heard at said hearing. The location of this hearing will be at 28 Beekman Avenue in Sleepy Hollow, New York, and is accessible to persons with disabilities. If special accommodations are needed for persons with disabilities, those with hearing impairments, and those in need of a translation from English, those individuals should contact the village clerk's office at least 1 week in advance for the hearing date to allow for necessary arrangements. And for the record, no one made this request. Written comments may also be submitted to the village clerk's office by mail no later than July 13th. And also for the record, I did not receive any written comments. By order of the Board of Trustees, June 29th, 2021. Okay.
Thank you. So, Mr. Giaccio, can you summarize this for us?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Community Development Block Grants and Sleepy Hollow go way back. We've received many grants from the Community Development Block Program over the years, including Sykes Park, Barnhart Park, the Senior Center, many of our streetscape projects in the inner village. And it's important to note that this is to help low to moderate income families and residents. And most of the projects that we've done are in the inner village over the years. We have gotten a senior center, a senior van, for example, that helps low-income seniors. So we've been very successful over the years. There's a 3-year cycle on these grants. We're actually in a current cycle of 2019 to 2021. The first project we did was on Cortlandt Street, where we redid the sewer. We are also working on a streetscape project on Clinton and another one on Cortlandt, which are winding up. The village board has to approve the current application that we're going to do for the years 2022 to 24. I have with me Carlos Figueredo, is that it? Close enough? Who is representing the residents of Sleepy Hollow, because that's a requirement of this grant. I do want to thank Ann White, who used to be our what's called the CDEG representative. She did her service. What's great about Carlos is that he lives in the inner village. He's also a village employee and understands the nature of some of these projects we have going, and also is bilingual. So it's important to have somebody like this as a CDEG rep. I reviewed the 3 projects that we're applying for with Carlos, and he gave input, but also I think is endorsing the 3 projects, which I'm going to read to you now. First one, as mentioned in the public hearing, was the North Washington Valley Street Drainage Improvement Project. This is planned drainage improvements will include the complete replacement of stormwater drainage pipes, to manage stormwater and alleviate existing flooding and erosion issues on North Washington all the way down to Valley Street. And I know the board is aware of this. We have a sinkhole near the bus stop here at the top of North Washington. That is the result of a damaged culvert. In fact, Carlos had talked to me today about how he sees it getting worse. This would be the first priority and the first project we would undertake if we were approved for this grant. Second one is a follow-up to that stormwater project, which is Valley Street streetscape improvement projects, which we have done on many streets in the inner village, and I mentioned we're going to do on Clinton and Cortland. This is a planned streetscape improvements, which include replacing curbs, sidewalks, ramps, as well as planting 30 new trees, installation of garbage, recycling canisters, traffic signage, new pedestrian lighting, and necessary service connections resulting from the replacement of drainage beneath the existing sidewalk structures. That is our second priority and will take place in the second year too. And finally, we have College, Cortland, Clinton pipe relining project, which is a planned pipe relining project will include the cleaning and relining of approximately 2,576 feet of 8-inch or 6-inch water mains to improve existing water quality and hydraulic capacity on College, Cortland, and Clinton Street. And some of the older board members or experienced board members may recall that we started this project in Weber Park, and now we're moving down into the inner village. And it is important to not only for clean drinking water, but also for improved pressure during fire events, etc. So this is an important project for the village as well. So those are the three projects. I don't know if Carlos wants to add anything or just mention that he is in support of them.
I'm aware of these projects that Anthony's talking about, and I think the first project should be really important is the one on Valley Street, because there's, every time that we have a heavy rain or storm, all that gravel disappears, and I think we already had a issue there with somebody walking or something, and we don't want to, have another injury. And the other two projects are also important because of the water pressure. Pipes are old, like the old, where the new building is, where the elderly's building is. I mean, it used to be, I believe, like a house or two houses. Now you got a building there. So the water lines there are small, and as the village down there gets expanded, the pressure water is probably not going to be enough. So these projects are really important that, it gets think about, and we try to go ahead with these projects. And that's it.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Giaccio about it? I just have one question. How long does it take to get the grants once the application is
We will know by the end of the
applied?
year.
Okay.
By the end of the year.
Okay. Does anyone from the public want to address the board on the matter of this particular public hearing? Ms. White?
First of all, I'm so delighted that, Carlos, you're taking this on. I heard about the impacts, but you actually experienced them, the impacts of not doing these projects on the community. And this is a source of funding for many projects that are not very sexy, that wouldn't be of interest to other foundations. So it's a very, very important applications to put in. And we have been very successful in the past. Thank you for taking this on.
Thank you.
Does anybody else from the public want to address the board on the matter of this public hearing? Nobody? Mr. Smith, how long can we leave this open for?
I was going to ask the same question, Mr. Chairman.
I would leave it for a week for written comments. We have to get the application in by the end of the month. So we will allow the public to still make comments, but close it next week.
Okay, so we'll do that. We'll leave it open for 1 week for written comments, and we'll close it next week.
We'll prepare a resolution.
Well, that would be for their next board meeting then, which next week is a work session, so leave it open for 2 weeks? How do you want to work that?
I will leave it open for 1 week. We'll have a discussion with the, internally
Okay.
with the village board.
So we'll leave it open until the 20th then? Okay. Thank you. Okay, so next up, we have a warrant. This week's warrant is in the amount of $1,149,364.61. Mr. Giacomo, you want to add any comments to this?
Sure. There were two large items on this warrant. One was for the public schools of the Tarrytowns in the amount of $575, $916.12. This is the one time of year where we collect the share of pilots. The village collects for all the entities, and then we have to disperse them appropriately. So this was the school share, and that was in the amount of $575,000. So I don't like to do that, but I have to. And then the other item that was there is $277,872.78, and that was for Historic Hudson Valley. This is the Bridge and Wharf project that we've been doing with them for several years, and we are just a pass-through. We were the lead agency on the project, so the money comes to us, and then we have to forward it along. Again, I don't like giving money away, but I have to because it's not our money. And that's why the warrant was so large.
Does anybody from the board have any questions for Mr. Giacomo?
Motion to approve the warrant.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion's been approved.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Scared.
I know you just scared us.
I know, we didn't expect you.
Forgot you were there.
Next up, we're going to approve the minutes from June 29th. Are there any changes or edits to those minutes?
Motion to approve minutes of June 29th?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Seconded.
Oh, sorry, seconded, sorry. Thought I heard somebody. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay, note the abstention from trustee Spiro. And the motion has been approved. Next up are the minutes from July 6, 2021. Any changes or edits?
Motion to approve the minutes of July 6, 2021.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The motion's been approved. So obviously, the mayor is not here. He is here remotely. I don't know if anybody else can see him, but I can see him on the screen. So that's why I'm here. So please forgive my mistakes. The only announcement I have right now is tomorrow our recreation department is hosting Party in the Park at Horan's Landing, and we have a country music concert tomorrow at 6 p.m. And I believe there will be a food truck and an ice cream truck. So come on down, bring your money for the food trucks and your chairs, and listen to some good music. Next up, we are going to move on to our department reports, and the only one tonight is our building department. Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is the monthly report for June. In the handout there, you'll see under permit activity, we issued 155 permits in the month. There was 54 certificates of occupancy issued, 2 updated certificates, and 13 property record searches were conducted. That work brought in $177,715,000. Under our budget for the first month of the new budget, we spent just over $425. Under zoning, actually, there was no zoning board meeting in June, so the next meeting is actually next week, next Wednesday, at 8 o'clock. It'll be here at Village Hall. And there's one item on the agenda. It's for a small variance request for a proposal on Hudson Street. The planning board met on June 17th, and at that meeting, they approved the project at 47 Clinton Street, which was a conversion of a portion of a laundromat to an apartment. They also approved the resolution granting a wetlands permit for the construction of a new pool on Riverside Drive. And they also approved an amended site plan approval for the new house being constructed on ToDo Drive. And the next planning board meeting is next Thursday. And it'll be at 7 o'clock here at Village Hall. We actually have 8 items on the agenda. Of some particular interest might be a new presentation for the development of the property at 135 Beekman Avenue. There's also a proposal for a new 2-family house on Cedar Street. We're also going to have a presentation for a new 2-family house on Clinton Street. And then down at the Edge project, we actually have an amended site plan request for the Block I development, Toll Brothers Apartments along the railroad tracks. There's also going to be a presentation for the Phase 3, as you probably know, the Block O and P townhouses, which is going to consist of about 106, I believe, 109 townhouses, of which 20 have already been approved. So this is sort of the Phase 2 portion of that. And we're also going to get another presentation on the Block H development. That's the 97 condominiums, retail space, and restaurant that is going to be south of the Heinz building, facing the new park development. So we're going to get another look at that. And then finally, there will be a presentation by the Local Development Corporation for the East Parcel Phase 2 work, which comprises some of the road and infrastructure work.
So there'll be a presentation, did you say?
Yes,
For
there will
the
be a presentation.
Okay, and I'm sorry, is there a date for that, or?
That's next Thursday.
Next Thursday?
Yep,
Okay.
next Thursday here at Village Hall,
Okay.
starting at 7 o'clock.
Oh, great.
We actually
Thank you.
run a work session prior to, around 6:30, but
Okay.
everyone's welcome.
Okay, thank you.
The LDC presentation will be about 11 o'clock, sounds like, right?
I know, right?
Um,
I know they,
First come, first served.
Sean, can I just ask you a quick question
Of
about
course.
15 Tuckahoe Drive? How long was that amended to? What's the timing on that?
I believe that has been extended to the end of this year. So December 31st, I believe, it coordinates the site plan resolution expiration coordinates with the latest amended building permit.
Okay, thank you.
And this particular scope was due to the fact that their proposed spa pool structure encroached farther into the wetlands area than originally was planned. So they came back to the board. There was some additional mitigation that was involved, and ultimately it was approved. So they're still moving ahead now, trying to get the exterior completed, and the inside finish work is being conducted right now.
Thank you.
Sean, if I may ask a question as well regarding Block I, so those are the apartment buildings, the rental buildings along the train
Yeah,
tracks?
That's the 3 brick structures that border the Metro North Railroad that comprise of 188 apartments.
In your estimation, what would be their current completion date?
So that was actually part of another one of my bullet points, but I'll skip right to it. That's the Block I development. Right now, they're seeking to open up their sales office and the model for review probably early next month. And The first occupancy will probably be after Labor Day, if possible.
Excellent.
So they're currently working on finishing up the exterior facades. They're doing the site work, parking area, infrastructure, drainage work, and they're getting ready to pour the sidewalks on Legend Drive, as well as the street trees and light poles. So they're moving.
You may have been intending to get to this as well, then related to that. Am I not mistaken that opening of that building will also affect the dedication of streets and ability of the village to sort of service the entire area, more of the area?
So in order for the public to access that building, the current construction gate is going to have to be modified. And we're trying to work out a logistics plan now on moving that. But yes, the public will need to get access to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that we actually have to accept the roads by that point in time, but they will be open, there will be, more road area will be open to the public by that time. Because with that being said, across the street is the Block E development, which is the first condo building, and that's going to start to come online probably about the same time for occupancy. With that being said, the J block, the townhouses in the J block, the next group of those, which is going to be farther north on the same street on Legend Drive, is also available. So we're trying to work out something now where we might actually have to loop that road around and make it, open around the block, sort of say down Horseman Drive or even down Palisades, in order to allow people to go continuously around. And also to allow the fire apparatus to get in there, emergency vehicles and everything else.
Okay.
So we're working now with all the different developers down there and trying to put together a plan to make that happen.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely looking forward to seeing more of the edge being opened up to the public.
By Labor Day, it's going to look totally different down there.
Great. It is already.
Just to jump back for a minute, last month we had 3 more hours of continuing education credits that are listed in there. I started to discuss with you the Edge on Hudson Development project. Of particular note too is the work that's going on down at the waterfront open space. So if you've been down on the temporary trail now, you can start to see, actually this past 2 weeks they started laying the pavers for the plaza area. They actually poured the concrete for the smaller plaza area today. It was today. It's been a long day. But yeah, that was done today. A lot of trees are being planted. They're building out the 2 different belvederes that terminate, are the termination points of both Horseman Boulevard and Palisades Boulevard. Of particular note, one is being constructed with the salvaged granite stone from the Beacon Avenue Bridge reconstruction, which is really nice. Also, this past month, the work on the riprap, the stone work along the Hudson River was completed. They actually wrapped that around the corner, heading towards the lighthouse now. And this past week, they started setting the granite stones, which is the lookout area out where the future hotel will be. So it's really coming along. If anyone wants an inside visit, by all means, let me know. I'll take you down there and get you inside. What else we have?
Yeah, the I block is the affordable housing units too.
That's correct.
So the board's gonna need to schedule the, do the criteria and schedule the lottery. And we do get a lot of calls about that, especially as the building gets closer to completion.
Yeah, the first building that will be probably ready for occupancy is the middle building. We call it I-2 or 203 Legend Drive. That has an amenity space in it. That's where the sales office will be, and that's where also the model is. So if you want to go down there and take a look at that, just let me know. One last thing on the development down there is the Hines development, the 2 Maxwell Drive project. As you can see, the parking garage is almost gone. Another couple of weeks. And
So no more calls on that, right?
Less calls.
Less calls. Okay.
Of particular note, the final piece of the concrete slab in the garage was poured, several hundred yards of concrete. But the exterior framing continues. The inside work on all the mechanical systems is underway. They're really moving pretty quick. They're flying. And then last item is under code enforcement. We had 24 complaints filed last month. There were 7 violations issued. Additionally, 6 appearance tickets, unfortunately, were served. Our building court was held on the 24th. There was 13 cases on the docket. 5 cases were resolved. And the next building court date is next Thursday at 3 o'clock. Attached in the package, you'll see a breakdown of our monthly report for revenue. We also have a chart of the revenue, and just to give you an idea of what each month is with respect to the last 3 years. We also have a breakdown of our expenses. The agendas for the meetings last month and this month are in there. And then at the end, there's just some photographs of some of the work that's going on down there.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. McCarthy?
Yeah, I have one question. Is there any indication when the second half of the Central Park next to the condo sales office will open at Edge?
That's probably going to coincide with this road opening.
Okay.
Because if we do open the road to Palisades,
Right.
then we're actually going to have to open that as well.
Right.
It's no way, it'd be too hard to isolate it. But
So that's the loop that you'll make?
that's
Yeah.
that's potentially the loop that's going to happen.
Yep.
Because if you know too, on the block J Townhouses, the shared access aisle that's between the units, we have units that are currently CO'd in sort of the second leg facing Palisades.
Yeah.
And there's more coming online very shortly. So with that, that creates a dead end for the fire department, so we're gonna have to pretty much break that open now,
Mhm.
allow them to pass through. So that will probably happen with that work.
Great. Thanks.
It's completed, it's just
Yeah.
kind of quarantined right now.
Yeah. Thanks.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I have one. It's the same one I always ask you. What's the status with the 2 properties at the top of Beekman?
Well, the former diner property, soon to be, I think, still Carvel / donut shop. The insides are getting close to completion. They're working on getting the next shipment of the cast stone work for the facade. Signage has been approved, awnings have been approved. So that's actually moving. The other property is not.
Clearly.
They happen to be one of the items that will be attending court next week.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have public comments. Just so you know, our public comments section is not a Q&A, and everyone has 3 minutes to speak. So is there anybody who would like to address the board? If you do, just come on up and speak to the microphone, please.
Hello, my name is Jeff Weiskopf. I live on Mahoney Place, which is the first street on the left into Weber Park from Route 9. It's a small pocket street. I'm here with Achille Tremontelli, who's my neighbor and the only other resident of Mahoney Place. I was trying to resolve this issue without coming here today, but it's been 2 years and 21 emails and nothing's happened. There's 2 issues actually. The first being the pathway. It's a right-of-way between Mahoney Place and Katrina. It's been in disrepair for a long time. It's an asset to Weber Park. Lots of people from New Broadway use it to access the gas stations and the other businesses on Route 9. And I haven't counted, but I see countless people using it every day. It is in complete disrepair. It's a danger to the public. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. There's exposed metal poles sticking out of it from an old fence. There's asphalt that's sinking on the top. There was an issue with some of the pipes that are underneath there at the top and bottom. Well, there was the whole thing, but the top and bottom were replaced with asphalt. The middle was not. There's roots and missteps everywhere. And on top of that, we have infrastructure under there for my house, my neighbor's house, and the 2 houses on New Broadway. Our pipes and our water pipes and sewer pipes are under there that go to Katrina, and they're partially exposed with the dirt that's on top of them with no asphalt in the rain. I just know that those pipes are going to be affected at some point soon. And I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. I did write many emails, but nothing. Oh, the one thing that has happened is the Department of Public Works back in February put barricades at the top and bottom, which were cast aside by people 3 days later. And now they pose their own hazards because they're taken apart, flipped on the side. And although it's just us on the street, this does affect all of Weber Park because lots of people use it. That's number one. The other thing that I was bringing up in those emails was the state of Mahoney Place. It's disintegrating, and I was asking for some indication of when it might be paved. I was told that 2 years ago that it would be paved with the rest of Weber Park. Since then I was promised that there'd be a pothole crew in March to fix some of the disintegration, but it's pockmarked now as it is. It's like a patchwork of holes. I believe my neighbors lived there for 30 plus years, and it's never been repaved in that time. And for all the people that use it to walk down the path, which is also in disrepair, I just want to bring it to the board's attention and see if there's anything that can be done, or if there is paving that's going to be done to Weber Park, that you don't forget about us. I know during Halloween a lot of people think we're a driveway and not an actual road, so, but we are a road and we can't fix this ourselves. Just like the passageway, we can't fix that ourselves either. So if there's anything that you could do, or just keep us in the loop, so I know that nothing's happening now, but it might happen in the future, I'd appreciate it. The last thing being, it is a private street. It's very safe for my 4-year-old because there's no car traffic on it, but we never use it because it's in such disrepair. So again, anything that can be done, I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
Could I just ask if you could forward your emails again to us? Because I don't ever recall seeing them, but I'd like to see them if you could forward it to us.
Of course. I didn't know the best way of handling things. I initially started years ago emailing Paula, who eventually referred me to Mr. Giaccone.
Okay.
And then it was basically the 2 of us and the head of the Department of Public Works, who I think was just retired.
Yeah.
So he was involved a little bit too. But the last email contact I had was February 26th, saying the pothole gang would come and clean it up in March, and I haven't done anything since.
Okay. Our emails are on the website, so if you don't mind just forwarding it to us as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Oh.
Hi. My name is Achilles Tramontelli. I live on Mahoney Place for the past 31 years. The easement between Mahoney Place and Katrina, like I was saying, is in very bad disrepair. About 2 years ago, by people walking back and forth on it, my sewer pipe broke. It cost me over $10,000 to repair. I had to repair the top and the lower portion of it by putting blacktop. Whoever was in charge at the time from town said that they were going to take care of the rest of it. It's been about 2 years, and it's still the same way. It's actually getting worse. And the street is, as he said. Okay?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. We'll look into addressing the issues. Thank you. Does anybody else from the public have any comments for the board? There'll be another,
I think this.
Go ahead, come on.
Hello again. I'm glad to hear that he's going to be working on the rainy water and also on the sidewalk on Chestnut and Big Man. It's very dangerous. I have 2 kids who walk all the time, and it's very inaccessible. If we can work on that, at least cover something. I know there's 2 metals in there that have been covered, but I think this causes more danger than fixing the problem. So we can address that as soon as possible. I really appreciate it.
I'm sorry, that was Beekman and Chestnut
Yeah,
intersection?
if you walk right here, Chestnut, right next to the bus
Right,
station.
there's
Yeah.
a plate on there.
Yeah.
So if we get that, I'm just going to
Thank
direct
you.
a question to Anthony. If we get, not if, we get the grant, when does that go into effect for starting the
Well, I
project?
don't want to make it sound like we're not going to do anything prior to make sure it's
Sure.
safer, but
No, I know.
probably in the spring.
In the spring, okay. I know it just keeps on growing. It's fine. So it's difficult situation, but thank you.
We do, and hopefully the county's not listening, we're going to do the project regardless whether we get the grant or not. And so,
Yes.
but it'd be nice if we could get the grant.
Yes.
So we can go all the way down to Valley Street as well, so.
Then we all win, right? Then we all win.
Okay, does anybody else want to address the board from the public? Carlos?
First of all, I just want to, congratulate Sean of the nice walkway along the Hudson River. It's coming out very nice. It's gorgeous.
Take full credit, Sean.
And the other thing is, we're talking about, developing the village, making new houses, making new apartments, business, restaurants. But also, we got to remember that we have to think about parking lots, making parks. We can't just make 5-story buildings and make only 3 parking spaces. Because if you see Beacon Avenue now, both sides, even now, parking spaces are full. And those buildings are not even available yet to the public. If you put restaurants there now, where are you going to put parking spaces? I don't think, I think the village should really be a little bit more aware of more parking spaces than than saying, oh, I'm going to make a 5-story, but, you need to park, you got to remember, you got to park these cars somewhere. And that's the issue that the whole village has, is an issue with parking spaces now. And I hope that the village, considers this issue through the whole village. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board? That's it for public comments. We'll have another public comment session later on in the meeting, if anybody would like to, if they think of anything else. So next up, we have resolutions, but before we start, I'm just going to let you guys know we're going to go through the first 3 resolutions, and then I'm going to call for an executive session to discuss our 4th resolution that Mr. Smith is going to give us. Okay? So we will have an executive session in the back, discuss it, and then we will meet again. Okay, so does someone want to take the first resolution?
Yeah, I'll take the first one. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow authorizing the village administrator to solicit bids for Route 9 culvert project, whereas the village administrator has requested permission to solicit bids for Route 9 culvert project, and whereas specifications for the work have been completed by Han Engineering, now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow authorizes the village administrator to solicit bids for the Route 9 culvert project. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed or abstentions? Motion's been approved.
I'll do number 2. Resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Village of Sleepy Hollow accepting engineering proposal for the Beekman Avenue Sidewalk Project. Whereas WSP Engineering has submitted a proposal to provide inspection services for the Beekman Avenue Sidewalk Project, and whereas the proposed cost for the work is $135,400, and whereas the Village Board has reviewed the proposal and has found it to be acceptable. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees accepts the attached proposal from WSP Engineering to provide inspection services for the Beekman Avenue Sidewalk Project in the amount of $135,400, and authorizes the village administrator to take any and all such steps as are necessary to effectuate the intent of this resolution. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay, the motion's been approved. Next one?
I'll take the next one. Resolution approving settlement of action by 139 Cortlandt Street LLC for property located at 139 Cortlandt Street, Sleepy Hollow, New York. Whereas proceedings were commencerated in New York State Supreme Court, Westchester County, to challenge the tax assessment for property located at 139 Cortlandt Street by owner 139 Cortlandt Street LLC and/or Daniel Pensy. And whereas the village and the property owner's attorney have reached a mutually agreeable resolution for the aforementioned pending proceedings filed under index numbers as follows: 56167/14, 56331/15, 55952/16, 56413/17, 56097/18, and 55893/19. And whereas it has been recommended to the Board of Trustees by its assessor and attorneys to resolve this litigation. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Trustees authorizes the village attorney to execute a consent judgment in substantially the form as attached to these resolutions, settling the claims in all respects with assessed values for the 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 tax years as set forth in the assessed value reduced to column on the schedule at the end of these resolutions, and be it further resolved, the refunds for the 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 tax years are authorized in the amounts set forth in the anticipated refund column on the schedule at the end of these resolutions, subject to adjustment by an increase of not more than 5% or reduction in any amount upon final calculations after entry of a consent judgment implementing the settlement. Okay, should I read the assessments on the other page?
You can read simply the assessed value reduced to and the anticipated refund.
Okay, so starting with 2014, moving to assessed value reduced from 198,848. What? No.
Just reduced
reduced to 163,748. And then the anticipated refund is $2,501.42. Thank God I got a wingman over here, right? 2015, so I'm going to the reduced to section of, and that is $168,348, and that anticipated refund is $2,348.55. 2016, it was reduced to $179,248. And that anticipated refund is $1,708.87. 2017, it was reduced to $171,908 with an anticipated refund of $2,340.63. 2018, it was reduced to $174,558, and that anticipated refund is $1,912. And then finally in 2019, it was $198,848, and there's no anticipated refund. And that is so moved.
Seconded.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The motion's been approved. There's a second part to that resolution. Do you want to take that, Jared?
Sure.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sandra needs a breath. She gets five.
Resolution approving settlement of action by 525 Riverside Drive LLC and Trifont Sleepy Hollow LLC for property located at 525 Riverside Drive, Sleepy Hollow, New York. Whereas proceedings were commenced in New York State Supreme Court, Westchester County, to challenge the tax assessment for property located at 525 Riverside Drive by owners 525 Riverside Drive LLC and then Trifont Sleepy Hollow LLC. And whereas the village and the property owner's attorney have reached a mutually agreeable resolution for the aforementioned pending proceedings filed under index numbers 55546/16 and 55788/17 and 55794/18. And whereas it has been recommended to the Board of Trustees by its assessor and attorney to resolve this litigation, now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees authorizes the village attorney to execute a consent judgment in substantially the form as attached to these resolutions, settling the claims in all respects with assessed values for the 2016, 2017, and 2018 tax years as set forth in the assessed value reduced to column on the schedule at the end of these resolutions. And be it further resolved that refunds for the 2016, 2017, and 2018 tax years are authorized in the amount set forth in the anticipated refund column on the schedule at the end of these resolutions, subject to adjustment by an increase of not more than 5% or a reduction in any amount upon final calculation after entry of a consent judgment implementing the settlement. So same thing, reduced to column. Okay, so for 2016, the assessed value was reduced to $233,025. The anticipated refund is $930.72. For 2017, the reduced to value is $206,720. The anticipated refund is $3,212.93. For 2018, the reduced to value is $199,338, and the anticipated refund is $0. That's it. So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? The motion's been approved. Okay, so I'm going to call for an executive session. Someone want to move that?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, this is the fun part. This is an executive session of the Board of Trustees. We're going to go into the back, and we will come back out, and we will probably be reading a resolution. So hold tight, and we'll be back in a little bit.
can you come back?
Michael, we're back if you can
Come back.
hear us. We're back in. Okay, we're back from our executive session. Can someone, we're going to end the executive session. Can someone move it?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay, so we are out of our executive session. And now we're back in our regular session. So Clinton, you want to just brief everybody on?
Actually, sorry, Deputy Mayor, should that go first?
Yeah, we'll let Clinton go first.
Okay.
Yes, in executive session, the board approved a resolution. I will read it now. Whereas the Village of Sleepy Hollow has received terms and conditions of sale on a public auction pursuant to Bankruptcy Code 363 of real property located at 177 Cortlandt Street, 116 Beekman Avenue, and 118 Beekman Avenue, Sleepy Hollow, New York. And whereas the village finds the use of the property as either a public recreation center or affordable housing or some combination of both would be advantageous to the village and further its municipal purposes and goals. Now therefore be it resolved that the village designates and authorizes either or both the village administrator, Anthony Giacchio, or village treasurer, Sarah DiGiacomo, to attend and to bid at the auction. And be it further resolved that Mr. Giacchio / Ms. DiGiacomo is authorized to bid up to blank dollars at the auction. In the executive session, the board set the blank dollars at a number which is the maximum amount of the bid, but we are not disclosing it now.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. And I just want it noted for the public that I had to recuse myself from that meeting and that vote, as I may have a conflict as regards to that transaction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're going to move on to old business and new business.
I'm sorry, let me recite the vote.
Oh, sorry, yes.
It
Go ahead.
was 4 to 1 to 2. Mr. Gonzalez voted no, and Mr. Andrus was recused, and Mayor Ray was not available to vote.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to old business, new business. Does anybody have any old business, new business? No?
No.
Great. Ms. McCarthy-Tompkins, is there any communications?
Yes. I received 2 communications regarding the Route 9 Active Transportation Plan. One was from Kendra Galetta. She's a resident of Dobbs Ferry. And the other one was from Michelle Bhattacharya. I'm sorry, I might be mispronouncing that. And she's a resident of Sleepy Hollow. I forward one email to you. I will forward the next one.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure. That's all I have.
Okay, great, thank you. So next up is our other public comments. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board? Mr. McCarthy? No, you're good? Okay, thank you.
Today.
Okay, so that's it for tonight. So we're going to adjourn the meeting. So we will have a motion to adjourn the meeting, please.
So moved.
Don't all jump at once.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstentions? Okay, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you and good night.